Yes, XRP is down right now, and so is the entire crypto market. But if you've been in this space long enough, you already know this is normal. Markets move in cycles. Prices correct, shakeouts happen, and weak hands exit. But what doesn't change is the macro trajectory, and that's exactly what this video is about. Because while the charts might look red today, the fundamentals we're about to break down are what shape the next wave. So if you're here for short-term noise, this probably isn't for you. But if you're here for signal, Raoul Pal level signal, keep watching. This is probably the biggest asymmetric bet I've seen since Bitcoin in 2013. Raoul Pal. That quote isn't just hype. When a former Goldman Sachs executive and macro investor of Raoul Pal's caliber draws that kind of line in the sand, XRP holders must pay attention. Because this isn't about daily candles or meme speculation. It's about the convergence of global liquidity, financial infrastructure, and the digital assets poised to run the rails. And Raoul Pal just confirmed, XRP is one of those rails. Subscribe to Be Crypto Smart, because what you're about to hear isn't on CNBC or Bloomberg. This is the real financial signal hidden beneath the noise. Why Raoul Pal is watching XRP. Raoul Pal doesn't invest based on noise. He watches the macro environment with a lens few understand. He's not in the game for hype. He's in it for transformative technology aligned with generational opportunity. So why is XRP now on his radar? Because of convergence between regulation, utility, macro liquidity, and institutional infrastructure. Pal sees a tectonic shift happening simultaneously across four pillars. The monetary system is being redefined as debt levels force global policymakers to consider new rails for value transfer. Technological innovation is breaking the traditional finance model with programmable money and interoperable networks. Global regulation is moving from gray zones into structured frameworks, creating winners and losers. Liquidity cycles are primed to inject trillions into assets with real use cases. XRP is one of the few digital assets sitting directly at the center of all four. Why does this matter to Raoul? Because he's not betting on hype cycles, he's betting on system-level transformations. Just as he did with Bitcoin in 2013 when it was a fringe idea, or Ethereum in 2016 when smart contracts were experimental, Raoul sees XRP's position today as a misunderstood asset that will one day seem obvious in hindsight. Let's break it down. Legal clarity. XRP is one of the very few assets with a U.S. court ruling that affirms its non-security status in secondary markets. In an industry where regulation is the primary risk, that's not just an edge, it's a moat. Central bank experimentation. Ripple isn't just attending crypto conferences. It's behind the scenes with pilot programs, CBDC platforms, and IMF working groups. Few understand how deep these partnerships go. Real-world liquidity. XRP's on-demand liquidity, ODL, product isn't theory. It's moving billions across countries, banks, and FX providers. We're talking frictionless capital movement with actual business results. ISO 20022 compliance. This is the global financial messaging standard that every major institution is transitioning to. XRP is not just compatible, it's integrated. That places it years ahead of most blockchain competitors. Now zoom out. Pal sees institutions shifting their strategies. Quietly, strategically. They aren't chasing memes, they're deploying infrastructure. They're vetting regulatory risk, selecting compliant assets, and preparing for liquidity expansion. This is the convergence Raoul talks about. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's massive. Raoul understands the market psychology that most retail investors miss. Once the narrative flips, it's too late. Once XRP makes headlines for solving real-world problems, the risk-reward is already compressed. The big gains go to the ones who positioned before the pivot. In his own words, this isn't just a trade, it's an asymmetric bet. And the odds, for once, are calculable. Macro cycle plus liquidity flood equals XRP tailwind. Raoul Pal's entire macro framework hinges on one powerful force: global liquidity. In his own words, liquidity is the most powerful driver of all asset prices. And if you understand where the liquidity is going, you can position ahead of the most explosive moves in financial history. Right now, we are at the edge of a pivot. Central banks worldwide have spent the last 18 months tightening the screws, raising interest rates, shrinking balance sheets, and draining excess capital. And what happened? Risk assets suffered. Crypto went into a deep freeze. XRP, like the rest of the market, stagnated. But here's the critical insight. Liquidity doesn't die. It waits. And when the next expansion phase hits, it doesn't trickle, it floods. Raoul calls the next expansion window the banana zone. This isn't a gradual recovery. It's the phase where exponential assets melt faces. It's when everything moves fast, violently, and seemingly without warning. It's the part of the cycle that delivers asymmetric returns if and only if you're already positioned. And XRP, according to Raoul's thesis, is perfectly positioned. Let's go deeper. Legal clarity. XRP has removed the biggest barrier to institutional inflow. Unlike 99% of crypto, it's no longer a regulatory gamble in the US. Real-world integration. On-demand liquidity, ODL, isn't a white paper. It's routing billions in cross-border volume. Enterprise-ready infrastructure. Ripple's years of work with banks, remittance providers, and governments means the rails are already built. Private discussions underway. Many governments and Tier 1 institutions are building with Ripple under strict NDAs. Raoul points out that major financial shifts happen in silence until suddenly, they don't. Now look at the macro backdrop. The Fed is projected to begin rate cuts by Q3 or Q4 to manage an impending debt refinancing spiral. Europe is already tilting toward easing. The ECB is under pressure to stimulate. Japan and China are both unleashing stealth liquidity through yield curve control and fiscal tools. The IMF is preparing frameworks for CBDCs, and Ripple has a seat at that table. What does this all mean? It means that trillions in sidelined capital, corporate treasuries, sovereign wealth funds, institutional allocators will be forced to move. And they won't be chasing hype. They'll be flowing into assets that are compliant, scalable, and built for real financial function. This is exactly where XRP stands out. While meme tokens are still marketing, XRP has been building for a decade. The pipes are already laid. The corridors are already active. The legal threat is behind it. Raoul's strategy is not to predict tops. It's to find undervalued asymmetries before the macro turns. And XRP, in his own framing, has the elements that smart money looks for. Risk has been removed. Utility is in motion. Infrastructure is enterprise-grade. When liquidity floods the market again, it will supercharge the assets already connected to the plumbing. XRP isn't just connected, it is the plumbing. And that's why Pal is watching. Because when the switch flips, XRP could go from dormant to dominant, and the window to front-run that shift is rapidly closing. XRP's role in the exchange of value layer. Raoul Pal has repeatedly said the next digital economy will be structured in layers. Not everything will be money. Not everything will be a platform. Some assets will serve unique roles. XRP's role? The neutral bridge asset. The exchange layer. Think about how the internet functions. It's not just about the websites, it's about the protocols beneath them. TCP, IP, HTTP, DNS. These silent layers power everything. That's what XRP is becoming for finance. Not the store of value. Not the app store. The protocol that moves trillions in value globally. Institutions, banks, and fintechs don't care about price charts. They care about speed, cost, reliability, and interoperability. XRP delivers on all four. Its real-world utility is staggering. ODL corridors functioning across 70-plus markets. CBDC platforms being built with XRP interoperability in mind. Smart contract integrations being explored through hooks and sidechains. Payment APIs embedded into enterprise software. And crucially, it doesn't compete with fiat. Complements it. Raoul sees XRP not as a threat to the dollar, but as a neutral layer that links dollars, euros, pesos, yen, and CBDCs seamlessly. That's value beyond speculation. That's protocol-level adoption. When the value layer becomes as invisible as the internet's protocols, you'll know XRP has won. But by then, the asymmetric gains will be gone. The SEC case and unlocked value. Raoul Pal has been outspoken about regulatory clarity. He said many times, Institutional capital doesn't enter until the legal guardrails are clear. That's why XRP's partial legal victory was a turning point. It didn't just unlock price, it unlocked possibility. Before Judge Torres' ruling, XRP was delisted from major U.S. exchanges. Institutional custody was considered risky. Banks paused partnership deployments. After the ruling, Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini relist XRP. Institutional custody was reactivated. Liquidity surged over 500% month-over-month. Ripple announced partnerships with central banks and sovereign entities. Regulatory clarity has a compounding effect. Raoul often compares it to a dam breaking. When the water finally flows, it floods everything downstream. Now add this context. XRP is one of the only digital assets with legal precedent affirming non-security status in U.S. secondary markets. It's integrated into real payment corridors. It has battle-tested infrastructure ready for scale. The combination of regulatory clarity and functional infrastructure is rare. Most tokens have one or the other. XRP has both. That's what makes it asymmetric. The digital asset bifurcation is here. In his recent analysis, Raoul talks about the great bifurcation, the split between speculative crypto and institutional-grade crypto. He's clear, 90% of tokens won't matter. But a handful will be the financial rails of the next century. What separates them? Legal clarity, regulatory compliance, real-world use cases, enterprise integrations. XRP is checking all four. Raoul puts XRP in the same class as ETH and SOL, not because of community hype, but because of utility and capital infrastructure. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. BlackRock and Fidelity exploring tokenized funds. BIS launching Project Agora with Ripple as a technology advisor. Ripple's acquisition of Medico opening doors to $10 trillion in institutional custody markets. Stablecoin and CBDC integration becoming the norm, not the exception. While social media chases meme pumps, the actual financial system is quietly upgrading. And XRP is already there. This bifurcation means the next cycle won't be about hype. It'll be about who serves the system. XRP isn't here to entertain. It's here to function. And Raoul knows, when function replaces fiction, capital flows. Quietly, powerfully, permanently. The time to act is before the headlines. This is what asymmetric investing is about. Positioning early, understanding narrative, and following the macro. Raoul Pal doesn't care about day-to-day volatility. He looks at liquidity, regulation, infrastructure, and adoption. And in all those categories, XRP is flashing green. This isn't about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about seeing the system change before others do, and placing yourself in front of it. Every previous asset that went exponential had three things: utility, timing, a misunderstood narrative. XRP has all three, plus legal clarity and enterprise momentum. So what's left? Execution and timing. If you wait for headlines, you'll be too late. If you wait for ETFs, you'll miss the multiples. If you wait for CNBC to talk about it, the opportunity's already gone. Raoul Pal has put XRP on his radar, and if history is any guide, that means the clock just started ticking. Subscribe to Be Crypto Smart and turn on notifications, because if you're holding XRP, this is your window. Miss it and you might miss the cycle.